This Sweet 16 matchup, is it the Vols' biggest game ever? And I'm not just throwing this out there for no reason. Chris Lowe, who has a great knowledge of the University of Tennessee, of ESPN, I know well, and he posted this, if we can share that post. And there was some blowback pretty quickly, as you would expect, from people that said, oh, you got two Elite Eight matchups. But I'll tell you why. I think Chris may be on to something. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Let's make it a simple poll question. It is today's tough question as well. Just, is this Tennessee's biggest basketball game ever? How about that? Today's tough question now brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Today's tough question. Boom. You heard that. Now take it. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Is this Tennessee's biggest basketball game ever? Ever. Tennessee, Kentucky, they've lost 2 to the Wildcats. It is an opportunity to advance to the Elite Eight. When I asked Caleb this question this morning and shared Chris Lowe's tweet, if we want to pull that up at some point, just let me know, Caleb.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now.
When he was immediately like, bigger than the Elite Eight? All right, Caleb, your thoughts, because here's Chris's. I go back to Vols Hoops' second ever NCAA tournament appearance in 1976. An upset loss to VMI in Charlotte with an injured Bernard King on the bench. Almost 50 years later, I believe this UT-UK Sweet 16 matchup is as significant as any tournament game the Vols have played since then. Caleb, thoughts?
Yes, and
message board thoughts.
And addressing before I pull this off, Chris Lowe was asked how it can be more significant than the 2 games they played with the Final Four berth on the line, including last year at Purdue. And he said more the feel. Also, third straight Sweet 16, experienced team that's been on big stages, and it's historic. First NCAA tournament matchup with biggest rival. Of course, they're all significant to this point.
Right. And I want to say this really quickly. Chris Lowe is not Stephen A. Smith. He tells you what he thinks both on and off the air. I can attest to that. So this is not some sort of let's throw out a social media post and get a big reaction, because I like doing that.
I totally agree.
Okay.
I got to be honest. Given what I've been saying from the start of the NCAA tournament, yeah, I have to say it's their biggest game. And here's why it's bigger with the 2 Final Four berths on the line. From my perspective, what have I said since the start of the tournament, Dave? That the only barrier for Tennessee to reach the Final Four was the Sweet 16. I said they'll either lose in the Sweet 16.
You did say that.
Yeah. I said they'll either lose in the Sweet 16 or make the Final Four. My point in saying that was that the Sweet 16 matchup would be tougher than their Elite Eight matchup. I think Tennessee matches up with Purdue and Houston better than they match up with Kentucky. And so this is a bigger game, just in the sense that I think it's Tennessee's biggest hurdle to their first ever Final Four. But then also, you're right. I mean, you can't just factor when games are to determine if they're big games or not, or what you're playing for. And to take this to football, for example, and now I know football's different because...
Can I give you a quick basketball example?
Sure.
I thought the whole UT-Memphis game, that is the greatest moment outside of a tournament victory that's ever been a part of Tennessee basketball. Leading up to it, I thought it was overblown. It paid off, but that doesn't always happen.
Right, exactly. I was going to get to that, funny enough. The Tennessee-Memphis regular season basketball game, to me, what has been the biggest game in Tennessee basketball history to this point. I got to be honest, I'll say that. And to give you a great example of this, Dave, when we talk about it, now, again, part of this is just the nature of college football, because college football for the longest time only had a 2-team playoff, and I thought it was better that way, but we don't have to go down that road. But I'll say this. Let's talk about the 1998 National Championship season, Dave. We talk about Syracuse, Florida, and Arkansas before we talk about the Mississippi State game in the SEC Championship, don't we? Even though the SEC that got them the SEC Championship game.
Yes.
And
great.
So
I just want to throw in there off the hook tracksuit. That's pimping. Thank you, Travis. Go ahead. It wasn't supposed to be. Now I'm worried about wearing this to a business meeting. Go ahead.
So it's it's a Sweet 16 game with a chance to go to the Elite Eight. It's a game against your biggest rival. Winning it would, put it this way, we can say this straight up. Because they didn't win those two Elite Eight games we're talking about, with Tennessee having a chance to get to the Final Four, winning this would match the furthest they've ever gone in the NCAA tournament. It would be their biggest win ever against an opponent. It would be their biggest win ever. There's not even a close second.
I don't. You also, how much do you consider the rivalry? The fact that they're 0-2.
Well, that's part of it. That's what adds to it.
Okay. Well, now I agree with all that, but I can't say that it's bigger than Elite Eight wins that would take you to the Final Four.
But they haven't gotten an Elite Eight win yet. So I'm saying at least for that 2-day period, put it this way, if they beat Kentucky and lose in the Elite Eight, which I don't think will happen, this Kentucky game would be their biggest win in history. There's no other, you can't name another one that would be a bigger win. Now, if they win in the Elite Eight to go to the Final Four, I still think there's an argument for that Kentucky game, honestly, because that's the one that I would say got them there. But, you know, going back to, I guess we could say 2000, right? When you covered that Sweet 16 matchup versus North Carolina, where Jerry Green didn't know how to adjust to a football player being in the post in that game.
Okay, but how about this? Going into the North Carolina game, and by the way, Derek points out it's a European gangster tracksuit as well. So thank you for that. Apex Apparel in Knoxville, by the way. So they're fantastic. They'll take care of all your apparel needs. But Caleb, going into the North Carolina game, that would be an opportunity to knock off North Carolina, which is a blue blood, and even more of a blue blood. Sorry, Kentucky fans, than you are. I mean, if you're in the ACC, you got a notch on everybody else. That's just a fact. So,
also, I mean, North Carolina's had more success in the post-integration era, which you have to weigh.
Yes. So going into that game makes me look back at that and think, man, I thought the fans were pretty excited, pretty fired up for that. Today's tough question: is this Tennessee's biggest basketball game ever? We'll get to the poll question. We want you to vote, and be sure you know that we're here at 10 a.m. and wherever you podcast. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. Banks & Jones.
All right, Caleb. Is this Tennessee's biggest basketball game ever? Yes or no?
Yes. I am an emphatic yes that this is their biggest basketball game ever. I think that
don't know how you can go there when we're talking about Final Fours that are on the court to be taken. And Tennessee's been in that situation twice.
They have. I mean, they lost both times, but again, this is to me, and again, maybe I will be eating crow more than anybody else, but this to me is a Final Four on the line. Like that, I guess that's where I'm saying this is for a Final Four berth, because I think they're a lock to win the Elite Eight game wherever they go. I think they just have to get past this game, honestly.
Okay. I feel like I continue to support your side, even though I'm arguing the other side, which I believe in. I think that an Elite Eight win into the Final Four is much bigger, and going into that, you felt the pressure of the moment, and they certainly did. But any of those other teams we've talked about, I didn't think had a chance to win a national championship. We haven't discussed that. When you look at this basketball team, and we're talking about expectations of a game that's what we do. That's down the road, and a team that we don't know the true potential of. Yeah, still. If I believe more so than any other team, Caleb, this team has a legitimate shot to win a national championship. I never thought that with the other group. Even last year's crew with Dalton Connect, I thought they leaned too much on him, even though I loved him, loved watching him play, and that they would eventually stumble. And they did when they came across an indestructible force. So, Caleb, more than any other team, this one is set to win a national championship if they win.
Yes, I think so. And I think to your point, I actually disagree. I thought last year's team did have a great chance. I think this one has a better chance, but I thought last year's team did have a really good chance. The Purdue matchup was just a tough one, but the other runs they made, I think you and I would agree, like that first Elite Eight run they made in 2010 with Wayne Chisholm and all that was a luck of the draw Elite Eight, right? They got it put in the right bracket, the right teams lost. They got to face the right opponents for the right matchups, but we didn't think that was a national title caliber team, honestly.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah. So I agree. This one actually has the talent to potentially win the national title, which speaks a lot more than what we thought we were talking about before. I would also, but that also to me adds to, that's why I think this is the biggest game. It's hard for me because you bring up these chances to go to the Final Four, but there's chances to go anywhere in the NCAA tournament, and we still think that Memphis game is bigger than a lot of those games historically. So,
oh yeah, I mean that did more for the program than the win over Winthrop.
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, and really going back to my point on that, I think the AP also kind of felt that a little bit, and that's why they made sure that they were 1 and 2 in the country heading into. Because what I've found is that basketball writers, more so than football writers, really love the sanctity and the health of the sport, so they'll do what they can to help it. I've noticed that through the years, but I mean that paid off.
Yeah, football will do that too. Yeah,
football guys are just kind of like, it's going to be here. I'm just, covering this team for now. It's kind of what they're like, which I don't know is a great way to put it.